Hello and welcome to the Ahead of the Game podcast. I'm your host, James Oxford, and today I have Chris Filer and Mathew Miller joining me to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Before we dive in, I'm going to ask you, the listeners, for a huge favor. Go ahead and click that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're feeling real generous, go share it on social media. Now, the Lakers didn't do a ton this offseason in terms of roster turnover, with the only two notable additions being Dalton, Knecht and Bronny James. And for at least one of those, the addition being notable is perhaps even questionable. That isn't to say that there weren't changes being made, though, as JJ Redick was brought in to be the new head coach. So, Matt, since that is the biggest move we have seen from them this offseason, let's start there. Is Redick capable of being that rare first-year success as a former player turned coach with no prior coaching experience? Or is he going to be similar to Nash and Kidd at his first stop, where it's kind of rough works and maybe he finds a spot later on or in a few years where he's a little bit more successful with the experience that is maybe required to be a successful head coach at this level? What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I think it really, in all honesty, could go either way. Like, I don't think they're going to come out and he's not going to lead them to 55 wins or anything like that. You know, LeBron is still LeBron. He's great, top 10 player. Anthony Davis, as long as he's healthy like last year, he's going to do what he does, and they'll win. You know, as long as those guys are healthy, just kind of what is he going to be able to get from the other guys is going to be the key. You know, is he going to do some different things for like Austin Reaves? You know, he can play in the pick and roll, good shooter. You know, you get Dalton Knecht, who feels like a guy kind of like Redick, but like a more athletic version of him. So is he going to be able to run some actions for him to help the shooting on the other end? Um, I think it just could go either way. Like like the shooting can be inconsistent, and the wing defense I think is going to be the big thing for them. Are they going to have enough guys to really guard out on the perimeter? You know, Vanderbilt's a really good perimeter defender, but you know it's just the shooting people talk about. And I'm a Cam Reddish guy, but it just seems like, and he's a fellow Dookie, like, you know, so maybe JJ's got some things to get him going, but it seems like he's a guy, whatever stop he's at, Atlanta, New York, Portland, now the Lakers, like as soon as it looks like he's getting a rhythm, he's figuring things out, he gets hurt. And that's kind of been a thing. And I like his game. He has everything you'd want, like the tools of a guy, 6'8", 6'9", long, can move his feet, can handle it a little bit, you know. I don't know if he's ever going to be a great shooter. I know that was his thing coming out of high school when I believe he was like the number 2 ranked player, actually ahead of Zion, who was third. But I do think Redick could get some things out of him, but it's all going to come down to, like, it just seems like sometimes it always comes down to LeBron. Like, what are they going to change? Because LeBron plays a specific way. You know, are they going to be able to get stuff from the other guys? You know, playing, are they going to be able to fit in? You know, is he going to be able to work with LeBron? I think is where it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I think that kind of where you were talking about with him with LeBron and that chemistry they have, I'm not that worried about their chemistry. Chris, where's your head as far as how those two work together?
Well, coach is right here. I mean, LeBron isn't a system player; he's the system. So the coach is limited in what I think any coach is, not JJ Redick specifically, but any coach is limited in how you would change about an offense with LeBron James in it, because he's maybe the best at ever doing this, at running offense. I mean, he's still at almost 40 years old, one of the best players in basketball. I mean, I know the EPM numbers are still through the roof. He's like 98th percentile overall. Offensively, he's still, he's different, but he's really not that much worse than even peak offensive LeBron. Most of the fall off has been on defense. He's still just the system. He is. And you have the only other real permanent chess piece is Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis isn't a spacer. So you have LeBron and you have Anthony Davis, and those are your chess pieces, and they're going to be in every critical minute. And you have to just fill out the rest of this offense with something. And I would almost give a body part for someone who could play 2 ways to play with these guys. We still don't have it after all these years.
So kind of like a combination of, if you could combine Hachimura and Vanderbilt, now you've got something.
We're so desperate. We're talking about Cam Reddish. Like that's what I'm dealing with still as a Lakers fan. I'm rooting for these guys, but it's going to take some kind of internal development from one of these other guys. And I hope Redick can help usher that along. But I think building around this team with those key chess pieces, you're just limited in what a coach can do as far as I think offensive game planning. I think it's more about we just need somebody to be able to play two ways. And we have young guys, we've got Knecht coming in. I don't think Bronny's a factor this year. Maybe he's a factor down the line, but I just can't imagine he's like a real factor this year. Maybe Knecht can come in and do, play two ways. I mean, he's a good shooter, he's a good scorer. I hope he can play some defense. I'm not banking on that for a first year rookie and it's someone who's not really a major defensive prospect. Maybe it's Vanderbilt getting up more than 33s in a season. That'd be fantastic. So that's the kind of thing. You're going to need Reddish to really pop from three. You're going to need Vanderbilt to suddenly come in and shoot a bunch of threes and be able to hit them. It's going to have to be something like that. That's how the progress happens here because we've got little guards like Russell and Reaves. Somebody maybe gets traded. That's fine. And that's the other way to make something happen with one of those options. But I think you're limited with this current roster and how much impact the coach can have. And I don't think he's going to tank because those chess pieces are so tried and true and proven. You don't have to work that hard. You don't have to install anything wildly new to be successful because the Lakers are still a good team. Those guys are so good. They're dragging this squad of a bunch of negative PM guys to the playoffs every year with 50 wins. But you're just limited, I think, as a coach in what you can do with this roster as far as creativity due to the lack of flexible talent.
I'm not so sure that it's kind of foolproof that he's not going to fail. And maybe we should set the, relative to what expectations are, because if you're right about how competitive the West is going to be, then it's very easy that they could maybe find themselves at the 11, 10, 9 spot, fighting to even hit that play-in.
Sure.
And then when you're in the play-in, who knows what happens. And I think if they don't make the playoffs, I don't think play-in is the level of acceptable play where they say, hey, JJ, you did a good job this year. So I don't think it's necessarily foolproof that they're, successful in terms of what they're expecting from him, I think.
Yeah, I guess that would still be like a reasonable outcome, I think, with this squad in a tough West for me, because I think that even if the West isn't better so much, it'll be tighter. I think there's more teams in competition this year
which is crazy because there's a lot last year.
I know that's the problem. So a playoff spot's not given for anyone. And when the standings are this tight, when Anthony Davis and LeBron are healthy all year, which you can't lock that in for those two guys. I mean, age and history.
Right.
They've been playing full seasons, I think, the last 2 years. And it was a 7-seed team last year with 47 wins. There's just they need some help. They don't have it, and they're just getting older every year. So if the Lakers come in and underperform by just a couple games, they're not going to be in the playoffs. They're not going to be able to play in probably. And I guess I just wouldn't necessarily think that's so much a JJ Redick thing unless it really looks like that on tape later on.
I wouldn't necessarily blame him for it if they didn't make the playoffs, but I certainly think that the expectations for the season, at least in the Lakers front office, is playoffs or bust, right? Like you have what could be your last year of LeBron, although with how he structures his contracts, every year could be your last year with LeBron. But I do think it's interesting. Although what I want to get back to just real quickly, where I think JJ could put his fingerprint on this team, and maybe I was a little bit off when Knecht was drafted. I said it was a LeBron James pick, but really what it could have been is a JJ Redick pick, because if JJ Redick's looking for someone to plug into a role similar to what he was successful in with the Los Angeles Clippers, a lot of pin down, staggers, zippers, things like that. Dalton Knecht is probably the best guy in the draft to do that with, just in terms of provable, like history of shooting. We know he was going to be able to come in and shoot unless something goes terribly awry. And you can't say, well, I hope he doesn't hit a bottom 20th percentile outcome and he can't shoot. Like, we expect him to be able to shoot minimum. So I do think that that's somewhere where JJ Redick could put his fingerprint on the team, especially maybe they could even, I don't know how much horns the Lakers ran this past year. I didn't recall seeing a ton of it from when I watched them, but that is an interesting idea with LeBron and AD at the elbows. A little bit of horns action where maybe you're even running some grenade out of the short corner You really easily get into some great grenade action out of horns. Just an idea of how they could use that new addition Knecht in conjunction with JJ Redick as a hire.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the first thing I thought when they drafted him. Oh, this guy's going to be perfect with JJ Redick. He's a bigger, JJ, his biggest problem too. He was 6'4" in shoes and he had short arms. Knecht has some sneaky athleticism to him, and he's
Mhm.
6'6". He's big. He's not a skinny guy. Like, he's not a little guy. So I think he's going to be able to get some things from him. And he'll sneak up on you and dunk on you.
Absolutely. So another guy I think that's interesting to talk about, Austin Reaves. He's super efficient as a scorer, although his efficiency did take a big hit this past year compared to what it was his sophomore year. So I don't think it's, and maybe I'm too early to say this, I don't think it's questionable that he's going to be like an efficient player. How much of a role is he playing this year? Is it kind of just what we saw last year, or is he able to take a step up with another year? He is already 26, so you kind of figure how much is there left in the tank to improve on the game. Although again, like years in the league sometimes is a little bit more important than age when it comes to how much development do you have left. So, is there any thoughts on Austin Reaves and how he might be able to take a step forward in his game?
I think he's still in my opinion, the third most important player on the Lakers. I know he struggled early in the season with his outside shooting, and I think that tanked the overall efficiency for the season, like you were mentioning. But I think that was more of a blip than anything. I believe that improved over the year. Yes, it did. It was right at the beginning of the year. He struggled a little bit, and then as the season went on, he was north of 38% the second half of the season. So I expect that to be back to normal. He's such a good decision maker. He actually can run a lot of pick and roll at a pretty high level with AD. That's a good deal. They're a good duo. He and D'Lo are just not great fits together because there's two small guards defensively, and neither one of them is very good at that. So that's the main Austin Reaves problem, if I'm going to even call it that. But I do think he's really the third most important player on the team, and he's on a fantastic contract. But so I guess then the next thing with him is he's easily the best asset the Lakers have, I would say, for a trade. So if you are going to, instead of giving up one of my body parts for a two-way player, if you're going to move an actual asset, Austin Reaves you'd think would be the guy, right? So like that's the one thing that I am thinking about him because he's not so good that he's untouchable in a LeBron Anthony Davis offense, in my opinion. But I do think he at this moment he's the third best player. What do you think, Coach?
Oh, he's definitely their third best player. He, like you said, he can play in the pick and roll. He's got that little wiggle to his game with his handle and stuff. Like, he can create on his own a little bit, which, I mean, D'Angelo Russell is D'Angelo Russell, but Austin Rivers just is a more consistent guy than him. So, but the problem is you can't trade D'Angelo Russell, although I think he's on an expiring because he opted in, right? So he's on an expiring. So maybe there's some value because it's expiring. Maybe if you combine him maybe with like Rui Hachimura or someone, but if they were to make a trade like that, they go to Portland to get Jeremy Grant, does that really move the needle much?
Yeah, I don't know. And Jeremy Grant's interesting for them because he is kind of two-way. I think if he were in a lesser offensive role, it would be our first two-way guy. And really LeBron and AD are so awesome that I'm not convinced that adding one good two-way player wouldn't be a total game changer for the Lakers because those two guys are still so awesome. So having one big athletic wing who can still space the court, that might be what it takes. And you're right, D'Lo is on an expiring $20 million deal. It's a really nice trade asset. Outside of it, everybody else thinks the same thing about D'Lo, that it's kind of even though he had a great season last year, was his best season, I think, and maybe ever, from an actual impact perspective. It disappears in the playoffs because in high level situations, he just really isn't a high level player. He just isn't consistently that guy, and he is a defensive liability, and he really isn't that great of a passer. I know that's what he was billed as a prospect, but he just has never been that guy. He is a ball stopper a lot of the time. and he's a bad decision maker, and that shows up hard in the playoffs. And so he ends up tanking your team, and I think it takes away from a lot of Austin Reaves' good things that Austin Reaves brings. I think he really harms Austin Reaves on offense in that way, and they're just such a bad duo defensively. So I'd love to trade D'Lo for something and get it. I think that's the mechanism, and if you throw some picks or something on top of it, that's the way you get the Jeremy Grant deal. And I think if I'm the front office, I'd like to think I'd be more competent than the current front office, but if I were the front office, I would be looking to explore that if possible, for sure. I think that's definitely what I'm thinking. I'm on the same page there.
He could come in and do what PJ Washington did for Dallas last year.
Right.
He just came from Detroit to Portland. He's been on all these losing teams, so maybe you get a team, you go to the Lakers, you're playing with LeBron and AD, a chance to play for something, motivate you a little bit more. And he's a better player than PJ Washington, so if he gets motivated, like that could be something. Like he could be like a legitimate third guy, and if Austin Reaves is your fourth guy, now you've got some things there that you can work with.
Jeremy shot over 40% from three the last 2 years. I mean, and he has defensive chops. He hasn't been that good of a defender, in my opinion, the last couple of years, but I think that's because his offensive usage has been so high. They've been asking a lot of him on offense. So if he were to scale down a little bit on offense, which he obviously would on the Lakers, what a fantastic potential option that would be for them.
Yes.
Now, the Lakers are in a position that most teams, maybe with these luxury tax apron conversations, don't have to worry about, or maybe they worry about more than the Lakers, I should say. They're in a position where you got one of the greatest players of all time at the tail end of his career. Are you at all worried about tax kind of hits, luxury tax hits, when it comes to bringing in new guys and trades? Or did you just say, hey, we got to capitalize on kind of the tail end of the window here, and they know they're going to make it back and all the ticket sales and everything they got? Like, I mean, maybe not. I say they're going to make it back. The tax is brutal at some point. At some point, there is no making it back. But, I mean, you almost owe it to your fans at this point to put everything into the LeBron train, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Coach.
No, I was just going to say it's the Lakers. Like, they're like one of the top. They're like the most popular basketball team in the world almost. So, like, they're going to make it ticket sales, merchandise, TV, all the little deals locally in Los Angeles. Like, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, the Buss family generally is a frustration point for us Laker fans because they operate it like a mom and pop shop instead of a Fortune 500 company, just across the board. So it's hard to predict what they will think about this. I suspect they will avoid the tax like crazy. But I do think that we should. I think the Lakers will likely go in as hard as possible right now because it's not, this is it. We're not going to tank next year and have all our picks anyway. So let's go in, let's do this, let's take a shot. I do think that's the game plan, but I suspect they will be avoiding the tax big time.
So do you think when they're looking at potential trade targets, they're just thinking, hey, we want 1 year? Because, I mean, Grant has 3 more guaranteed years plus a player option. Are the Lakers thinking, man, we're worried about that contract stretching into 2 or 3 years down the line?
I'm not super concerned about that because I think a lot of the other guys on the roster are tradable. None of them are like fantastic players, but it's not a lot of terrible contracts. Rui's on the $18 million deal, and that's about to expire. Reaves is on a fantastic $13 million contract. Gabe Vincent's only 11, and so is Vanderbilt. So with the cap continuing to go up, I don't think it's like a huge concern right now. And Jeremy Grant's contract's going to look better and better every single year, just based on the cap increasing so dramatically, so regularly. It's a lot of these longer contracts that just aren't individually that bad. So I think they're all pretty. You could get off them if you wanted to. So it's maybe not. I think they'll generally avoid the tax, but it's probably not going to inhibit a specific trade like that. And it's just kind of what I'm thinking right now.
And haven't the Buss family too, like, I know, Jerry's passed away, all that, but they like to take care of their superstars.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says. They love to take care of them. So if LeBron wants it to happen, you would think they're probably going to do it. If he says, look, I want Jeremy Grant, they probably go out and get it if they have an opportunity to.
I think so too.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, is there anything else y'all wanted to add before we go over predictions?
I
No?
don't
All
think
right. Well,
so.
we have I have three books up. Two of them have them at 43.5. One has them at 44.5.
Oh,
It's brutally low for where I think Chris was thinking.
oh no, that
Oh man.
hurts.
So I actually had them over 43.5. 44.5 is maybe a little bit tougher, but I'd probably still take the over on that. I was actually thinking 45 wins, kind of where my head was at 45 and 37. So I'm not super sure that they're going to make the play-ins, but I do think they're going to for sure be over 500.
Yes, yeah, that's my number 45. That's the first thing I thought. This feels like they're a 45 win team. You make a mover, maybe he get up to 50. Like you get Jeremy Grant, that could change. But as constructed, they're probably looking 45 wins.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think 45 is about right. It's just assuming the same level of health for the main guys is really hard to do. And
It
it's
could
a
go
tough,
under real quick.
it's a tough contract. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a tough conference. It's real tough for sure. So
Yeah,
And then with
LeBron misses 20
LeBron's
games, and
age, yeah, like he's third. Like you never know when Father Time is just gets boom. He's like, remember like with Brett Favre that he has that awesome year with Minnesota. Then the next year he looked awful. It was like, oh yeah, Father
yeah.
Time got it.
now I'll say there's some teams where I'm like, hey, you should hammer that over or hammer that under. This is not a team where I'm like feeling confident either way because the health is so crucial to them of either one of LeBron or AD. Where if either one of them misses crucial time, you could see it going downhill quick. I think.
They're not good. If
Yes.
one of them misses 20 games, this is not anywhere close to a playoff team. This is like there's no chance. It would take unbelievable. Like Jalen Hood-Schifino would have to come in next year and be like an all-star for this to happen.
And if
So
your hopes are riding on that, that's not a good thing.
Don't
no.
sleep on Bronny. Don't sleep on Bronny, man.
Hey,
He's ready to
I
step in
like
and.
Bronny.
I like
He's gonna have
Bronny.
some tools. I like his tools eventually.
Yeah. I like
He
him.
showed some things at the end of summer league.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about Bronny real quick. No reason we got to if you want to. I mean,
I mean, I don't have like I think it's a lot of the hate, like because his dad is LeBron James. He's the 55th pick, and he's being treated like he was the number one overall pick, which is not his fault. But he's 6'2". He can really defend, and he's got some chops there. The offense is hit or miss. He's inconsistent there, but he can work on that. Like he's got tools to be
It's
like he kind of has that. Like you're gonna think I'm crazy. I don't know if he'll ever reach it, but like I see a little like Drew Holiday in his game. Like just the way he like with the tools he has. Not saying he'll ever be that guy, but I can see some of the tools, like a smaller version of Holiday.
Yeah, he really is like an unbelievable athlete. He's a fantastic athlete, and I know he was the 50 or was it 55th pick.
Mm-hmm.
But like for a 55th pick, he looks pretty good, I think. I mean, because he's got it's really mostly just the jump shot, which is bad so far. But if that comes along, you've got a real player because he's a smart offensive player, I think. He's a good passer, and he's already a really nice defender for a guy that age. And he's coming off a heart attack. He's coming off a heart
Yes.
attack. He missed a whole offseason last time. He
very
gets thrown
fair.
on this
Very fair.
USC team. I mean, it's not crazy to me that ends up being a good pick. But we're not there yet. That's a few years out. Or I'm never gonna like
He's
expect anything.
Yeah, he's
when he
definitely going to
becomes
spend
a
most of the year,
factor.
if not all of it, in the G League. Although I'd be shocked if we didn't see at least one game in the big
It'll be the
leagues.
first game. I think it's going to be the first game of the season. Put him and his
That could
father
be.
out there for 5 minutes just to get that out of the way because it has to happen. Like
We're
Right,
gonna
because it's the story. It's not until it does happen, right? It's the story until it's not the
exactly.
story.
Just get it out of the way in game one.
It'll be the Ken Griffey Jr. moment for sure. We're definitely gonna get that.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Chris and Matt. If you are still listening to the podcast, and I know you like it, so go ahead and make it official by liking the video. Subscribe to the channel, share it out, and have an excellent day.